From now on, we will have a press conference by Prime Minister Kishida. First off, we will have remarks from Prime Minister Kishida. The floor is yours. First off, about COVID-19, the people who are suffering from this pandemic, from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to share my sympathy. As for the spread there has been a spread of COVID-19. However, compared with foreign countries, the spread has been contained at a low level. And this is thanks to cooperation from the national public and HCPs and the health centers staff. And essential workers are working so hard to make it happen. And once again, from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to share my respect and appreciation. Since I took this post of Prime Minister all the time, in terms of crisis management, I have considered the worst-case scenario to respond to COVID-19, especially about the Omicron variant. Since the beginning of the occurrence, we have taken a lot of precautions to take actions. About Omicron variant, scientific nature has not been discovered fully. We decided to protect the people's lives with that situation. And about the Omicron, the WHO has designated as a variant of concern. And since then, there have been 3 months which passed, and there has been an accumulation of the foreign countries' insights, and the scientific nature has been discovered to a certain extent. And with the cooperation from the people of Japan, recently, across the nation, Omicron's variant spread situation has been coming down now. Now, in 36 prefectures, last week and this week, when we compared the 2 weeks, the number has been below, which means the number of infections is now declining. In Tokyo, for 9 days in a row, the number of new infections is dwindling compared with the previous week. There has been such a change observed. And of course, from the experts, there was a point made. In a time lag, there will be severely ill patients, which will be observed more. So with the highest sense of urgency, we'd like to take actions. About COVID-19, the basic postures and precautious posture will be maintained. At the same time, towards the exit of the 6th wave, we are steadily making a path forward. And in phased manner, we have to make preparations. And today, given such a basic posture or way of thinking, I'd like to talk through these points with the people of Japan. First of all, on how we can maintain our precaution. I think there are 3 major points about the Omicron response. First of all, above all, people's lives have to be protected. And number 2, the mild cases recuperating at home, and many of the people, anxieties have to be considered and responded. And socio-economic activities have to be also continued as much as possible. And based on such ways of thinking, with municipalities and healthcare professionals and with experts, we have closely collaborated and communicated. And we have taken various actions. Protecting the people's life from this perspective, especially the elderly with high risks for aggravation and underlying conditions, we have to keep providing medical care. And last November, the overall picture has been compiled. And since then, we have tried to enhance the medical care system. And last time around, compared with the peak, 1.3 times as much beds to accept such patients have been secured across the nation. In Tokyo, including emergency hospitals, we have increased the number of beds, and now we have 1.8 times more capacity. And as a result, the number of infections compared with last summer, it's almost 4 times. However, compared with summer, with full bed occupancy, the severely ill bed occupancy, we still have some allowance. And number 2, how to respond to the anxieties of the mild cases. 25,000 institutions and 18,000 drugstores have given us some cooperations to enhance regional medical care, and so-called game changer, which is oral drug, has been secured with maximum efforts. And Merck Molnupiravir across all the medical institutions and drugstores, 130,000 units have been already delivered, and we were able to deliver this to 58,000 people, Zebri, which is neutralizing antibody since the early part of this year. 66,000 people have been administered with the drug. Remdesivir, which is widely spread for mild cases, this is one of the options now. And last week, Pfizer's antivirus medicine has been given an approval, so we have various therapeutics which are being established right now. And domestic oral medication, and the state or the central government has given a full support to clinical trials, and once efficacy and safety is provided, then we'd like to kick it off. And number 3, the economic and social activities have to be maintained to the maximum extent. So based on the scientific evidence from the experts, the shortening the close contact quarantine period, and a review of the discharge and hospitalization criteria. On these fronts, we have taken a focused approach. Such basic posture for the future response is going to be very critical view. So if we can steadily decrease the number of new infections, even so, in a time lag, the number of severely ill might be on the rise. So therefore, we have to maintain such a posture. And infection status and bed occupancy still have some uncertainties in some areas, and priority measures will remain in place. And without slackening our efforts, we try to contain the virus. And tomorrow we will heed the opinions from experts, and after the report to the diet, and on the 20th, there will be the expiry date for 21 prefectures, out of which 16 prefectures, and there will be the expiry for Wakayama on the 27th. Up until the 6th of March, there will be the extension of the priority measures. So wherever it takes precaution, we will do so. We will maintain precautious posture. At the same time, to the exit of the 6th wave, we have to take a step forward, and we'd like to do 3 things. Number 1, about the bed occupancy will be taken into account comprehensively, and once there is a calming down of the situation in some areas, the priority measures will be lifted. First off, the 20th will be the expiry date for 21, and Yamagata, Shimane, and Yamaguchi, Oita, and Okinawa prefectures measures will be lifted on the same day. And number 2, about vaccines and the booster shot program. Thanks to cooperation from stakeholders from the 15th and onward, VRS and virus recording system on an input basis per day, 1 million shots has been the pace that we have been observing right now. We shouldn't, we have to maintain our precautious approach, however, in a stable manner. We have to make sure that we make our best efforts, the maximum efforts to maintain 1 million.
To all the municipalities in Japan, the booster administration is stepping forward. And this week, we started a workplace vaccination ahead of what it was planned. And to protect yourself and your family members, we have to protect the society. We have to make a step forward in our countermeasures against infection. I hope that as many people as possible and should be vaccinated. The third point is the review on border measures. To date, we have imposed very serious border measures, and we had time to prepare sick beds and vaccination. We have taken measures in Japan, then we are able to beef up a structure in Japan starting March the 1st. Test and the information about the actions in case the home quarantine period, in case there are high risks for infection. Basic conditions are maintained and observed. We're going to keep the most serious, strict border measures in G7 nations, but we will relax the border measures in place. For the home quarantine period, in a fight against Omicron variant, we have accumulated knowledge and expertise, and based on that, pre-departure test and after arrival test, and we do the test is done on the third day. If the test result is positive and negative, then we reduce the quarantine period from 7 days to 3 days. In case there are some high risks for people and they have quarantine at designated facilities. For people who have the booster doses, if they come from areas where non-designated countries, then there will be no home quarantine period. Then we're going to have the home quarantine, which is the same as other destinations. And for foreign people coming to Japan, under the guidance and supervision of receiving organizations, and they are allowed to come back to Japan, except for the purposes for sightseeing or tourism. The procedures will be completed online. We're going to simplify the procedures for entry. The daily limit on visitor to Japan will be shifted from 3,500 to 5,000 based on the Japanese people demand coming back to Japan. In phases, we try to increase the international traffic of people between Japan and the rest of the world. We're going to make a preparation for the phased easing of entry restrictions. I repeat myself, we have to prepare then for the completion or end of the sixth wave. We have to have infection situation under control. We have the oral drugs and other medicines as well, vaccination. We have to ask people to wear masks and wash their hands and rinse their mouths and ventilation. We have to ask for your continuous support to our countermeasures. BA2, an existing Omicron variant may be replaced with the BA2 or COVID derivative. We have to pay attention to the changes. In case there are some signs of the aggravation of infection, they're going to have a review on what we are going to do. When we have a clear picture on the exit from the sixth wave, we'd like to make a step forward for the restart of economic and business activities. We cannot be complacent about the current situation. We have some concerns and fears about what is going to happen, I believe, but step by step, we'd like to go back to what we used to have before the COVID-19. I'd like to make a step forward in lockstep with the people in Japan. I believe that the current situation now is a worst period. We have to get over the current difficulty and together with you, then let me ask for the support from the people in Japan from the bottom of my heart. Before closing, let me talk about the situation in Ukraine. We have great concerns. We are paying attention to what's happening right now, but the situations are highly unpredictable. On the February the 12th, we raised advisory level to level 4. We strongly urge the people in Japan, people in Ukraine, Japanese people in Ukraine, to leave the area as soon as possible. We made arrangements on chartered flights, and for the departure of Japanese nationals from Ukraine, then we will go extra mile. On 14th, we had the NSC 4-minister meeting. We discussed government response, including the protection to Japanese nationals. On 15th and 16th, I myself had a meeting with the Ukraine President Zelensky, the EU committee chair. Then we had the telephone conference of the Prime Minister Johnson of the United Kingdom. I expressed my support and then to the Ukraine, the sovereignty and territorial integrity. We cannot recognize the forcible change of status quo. Japan expressed at least $1 million of the support to Ukraine. Then I pledged that Japan will be engaged in diplomatic efforts to defuse the situation. There was an agreement from von der Leyen, EU chairman, and Japan decided to deliver LNGs to Europe, and deep appreciation was expressed. And there will be collaboration between Japan and the EU about the energy area. We are going to make a diplomatic effort to relax the tension in the area. Together with international community, such as G7 nations, we're going to liaise closely with those nations. We'd like to take flexible measures depending on the situation.
Now we'd like to take questions from the floor. So those who have been nominated, come to the floor and state your affiliations and your names, and one person, one question, please. First of all, we'd like to take questions from two lead companies. Mainichi Newspaper, Koyama-san. Mainichi Newspaper, my name is Koyama. So about the exit, in a phased manner, you'd like to take an approach, and you didn't refer to one thing, which is about COVID-19 and about the category, lowering the category for category 2 or 5 for infectious disease law. How do you see this? So are you considering lowering the category in terms of Infectious Disease Act and the categorization underneath? For such discussion, on a continuous basis, there is a deliberation committee of the Health Ministry, so we would like to continue on such discussions by hearing opinions from experts. However, if the COVID-19, if the category becomes category 5, the capturing and the report of the health conditions and the request for stay at home and hospitalization, such measures will not be enabled. Still, anxieties over the expansion of the COVID-19 has been still observed or felt in the society. At this juncture, regarding changing such a categorization will not be practical or realistic. Regarding the points that you have pointed out, like I said in the beginning, on a continuous basis, with the Health Ministry's deliberation occasions, we'd like to listen to the opinions of the experts to continue our discussions.
Next, Mr. Amroi from TBS, please go ahead. And this is the TBS Amroi. I'm one of the coordinators. Can I ask a question about the booster administration of vaccines like COVID-19? You said that based on input on VRS, the daily number is 1 million, but the vaccination rate is 11.9%. This is a low level. compared with the rest of the world. Other nations started an early vaccination. Why do you believe that there's a delay in the booster vaccination in Japan compared with other nations? On the point you have mentioned, first off in Japan, compared with other nations in the world, the first and second vaccination started later than in other nations. That's a reality. Look back on the one last year in autumn, in October and November. Still, we were doing the first and second administration of vaccines, and that's a reality. Since the second administration, there has been an interval of 6 months. Given the backdrop, the booster administration is going on right now. That is the situation surrounding Japan. On the booster doses, on November the 11th, after we get the pharmaceutical approval, the vaccination started in December. In the situation that I have mentioned, then there were procedures that we took. You made a point just now on the booster administration vaccines. Since February, the vaccination started in full swing. Then 1 million doses per day. That's a level we have at this moment. Going forward, workplace vaccination is going to start in a full-fledged manner. Vaccination tickets are being delivered to the people and earlier than what was expected. Then I will try very hard to give acceleration on the booster administration. Let me add one word. In Israel, the United Kingdom, those countries were ahead of others in the booster administration. Even in those countries, infection rate is quite high in some of the nations in the world. Compared with those nations, the number of infection cases in Japan is far less than what they were in other nations. That's a point I like to make.
From now on, we'd like to start taking questions from other media outlets. Please raise your hand. We will nominate the person who can ask a question. And we'd like to provide opportunities to as many people as possible, so please try to simplify your questions. Thank you. Yomiuri newspaper, my name is Miyai. About the border control measures, I have a question. About the new infections, so they're nearing a peak. However, still we have lots of patients, and many municipalities are asking or are actually implementing the extension of the priority measures. Why did you relax the measures now? And per day, the number of new entrants will be raised from 3,500 to 5,000. What is the rationale behind this number, 5,000? Quarantine facilities and the quarantine office at airport, did you consider such aspects as well? Regarding the first point about the border measures, like I said in the beginning, about Omicron variant, and we wanted to delay the spread of the Omicron variant in the domestic sphere. So therefore, we prepared stringent measures. And the effects of those measures in terms of enrichment of the medical system and the prevention and the testing and early diagnosis enhancement on these fronts, various results have been observed already. However, afterwards, not only within Japan but also in overseas nations, there have been some changes. And when we consider border measures, the infection status or the differences of infections between overseas and domestic, and the border measures in overseas nations, and the third, inoculation and the progress, so they have to be taken into consideration for exercising the right decision. And on these fronts, there has been the change of the situation. So therefore, in particular, we refer to what's going on in overseas nations and about border measures. we would like to review such measures. But we shouldn't relax the measures overnight or drastically. First of all, as step one, about the border measures that I have described, we have done some review. And 5,000, regarding this number, there was a question for the rationale. And about the total number of new entrants, reflecting back, in March last year, the cap was around 2,000. And last year, in August, so that was raised to 3,500. And then last year, again in November, it was expanded to 5,000. So the total number of the new entrants has been limited like this. And then later on in November, the Omicron variant occurred. And given such a situation, 5,000 was declined or decreased to 3,500. And reflecting back on what happened, first of all, in phase one, about border measures, we'd like to have a relaxation. So therefore, from 3,500, it's now returning to 5,000. So domestic and overseas infection status will be observed. And each nation's border measures will be also taken into account. And the quarantine measures and the system will be scrutinized. And regarding this number again, how it should be will be reviewed in a thorough manner. That's all for me.
次の篠原さん。
Mr. Shinohara, please. This is Shinohara from TV Tokyo. Can I ask a question about the situation in Ukraine? Then today in the Kishida faction or ADP meeting, if the forcible change of status quo is allowed, then we have to think about impact in Asia. If there is a concern having China in mind, and it is discussed and about a forcible change of status quo, then specifically, then what's your concern? What's your understanding about the impact of a forcible change of status quo in Asia? What's happening right now in Ukraine is a matter of tension. If you change the status quo forcibly, if that is allowed, not only Europe, but Asia, not only Asia, but to the international community, there will be a wrong message given to the world. That's my concern. In response to the situation, we have to make diplomatic efforts so that we can diffuse the situation. That is what we have to do. And whenever I have meetings with leaders of the world, then I have an exchange of opinions, and we try to confirm my stance. And then I am not sure what is going to happen in Ukraine. The situation is highly unpredictable, specifically in Asia to other nations in the world or regions in the world. What kind of impact will be given? I think I have to refrain from talking about that. But basic stance I've mentioned is an idea of great importance moving forward. And together with the leaders of other nations, and I'd like to make a diplomatic effort and to relax the tension in the region.
NHK Hasegawa, on a related note, and after this meeting, you will have an online conference or a conference call with Vladimir Putin. What would you like to discuss about the Ukrainian affairs with Mr. Putin, with the Russian president, regarding that conference at the right juncture? We wanted to carry it out. So therefore, that's what we are working on and making coordinations right now. Like I have said before, changing the status quo by force should not be permitted. And based on such a thinking, and furthermore, between Japan and Russia, the relations have to be also considered. And with that in mind, we have to de-escalate the tensions. Such diplomatic efforts of each nation should be responded to by Russia. So we need to act and work on Russia. That would be important.
This is Buzetaria. Can I ask a question about border measures? Relaxing the new entrant to Japan for the purpose of the tourism. What's your view on this and visiting Japan for the purpose of tourism? Like I said just now, for foreign nationals, and if they come to Japan, then for reasons other than tourism, then they are allowed to enter Japan. That is what I said. Then you ask me an idea about the tourism or tourists coming to Japan. When people come to Japan for sightseeing purposes or tourists, we look at the infection situation in Japan and outside of Japan. Then we look at the border measures of other nations. Then we look at the execution of quarantine measures in Japan. Then we take account of those factors. Then step by step, we will consider having a review on the measure for tourists. And then we'd like to study the possibility of restarting the visits of foreign people to Japan for as tourists. When we discuss matter, when it will restart, that's a policy I have in mind.
Yamazaki-san, please. Nihon TV, my name is Yamazaki. About the booster shot program, I have a question. About the elderly care centers, there have been clusters happening, and there has been a call for early administration, and accelerating the program has been called for by the Japanese government. However, you haven't really observed a good progress. And about the elderly getting the third shot, how do you see this, and why? And where is the bottleneck and for the slow progress, and what will be your future countermeasures? About the elderly care centers and the staff and the elderly in those facilities have to be administered. That's critical. And as for the Japanese government, about the third inoculation, in order to proceed with the program or ignore, first of all, the residents and the staff at the health those facilities have to be given the first priority, and on the 17th of December and onward, and after the completion of the second shot, within 6 months or 6 months interval has been decided. And as for necessary vaccines, enough supply has been given. However, regarding your point made, there has been some point made about the progress on the vaccinations. And as for the Japanese government, on 28th of January, once again, the health ministry to each municipality across the nation, close collaboration between municipalities and elderly care centers, and the acceleration of the program was mentioned. And even without the tickets, the third inoculation will be enabled. And about the Moderna vaccines have to be utilized in a proactive manner. So that was notified to those municipalities. And the majority of the municipalities already about the visit administration or administration in those facilities was kicked off already. And the elderly who desire to get vaccinated should get vaccinated. And we'd like to maximize our efforts to make it happen.
This is Sato from Hokkaido Shimbun. Including today, Prime Minister you said that government has to brace for the worst case scenario. On the booster administration vaccines, as you pointed out, the initial judgment, the preparation of a test kit. Right now, many people under home recuperation, how those people should be treated. I wonder if the government and you have braced for the worst case scenario, or is it good enough? You didn't. This is your first prime minister. This is the first prime minister meeting for about 1 month and 2 weeks, or in this case, for the first press meeting for 2 months. The sixth spike of infection is something we never seen. But do you believe? I think that it was a problem for prime minister not to communicate the information when the information had to be communicated. Then what's your view on this? First point, under the current administration, we have taken various countermeasures against COVID-19. There are various indications, and there is criticism. Then I think we have to take them in a sincere manner. Under the current administration, the most important point in our countermeasures in November last year, and we saw a total picture of our measures. First, we look back on the situation in summer last year. We have to prepare the medical treatment structure to treat COVID-19 patients. We have to prevent the vaccine, the test by test kit, and early treatment using oral drugs. We have to enhance the flow of treatment. Under the current administration, the one important point is to prepare comprehensive structure to deal with this issue. Each one of those matters is quite important, but showing a comprehensive picture of countermeasures so that the people in Japan can feel safe about what the government is trying to do. And I think that was an important point. Then by explaining the total picture of the situation right now to the people in Japan, then we can help people in Japan to feel safe as much as possible. We have to make an effort in that direction. COVID-19 infection cases are under control at this moment. There is a report that number of infection cases increased 4 times. But sick bed for critical people, we have some extra capacities in medical treatment structure in Japan. I'd like to ask you to look at the situation right now. It is against this backdrop that I'd like to ask for cooperation from the people in Japan. The second question is about the press meetings. A press meeting of this kind, as you pointed out, there was some interval between the last press meeting and this press meeting. And I talked to reporters, and I did the doorstep interviews with reporters, and I communicated information. And I talked to reporters, I took questions, and over 30 minutes at the longest. Since the launch of my administration, doorstep press meetings, I think I did more than 60 doorstep press interviews or meetings. The formal press meeting may be different, but it's quite important for me to communicate information through various channels. And that is exactly what I'm trying to do. The form of communication, I believe opinions are divided. There are different types of opinions. Then I will listen to what they have to say. Then I like to think about how best I should communicate information from the government.
Now, one question for each media outlet. And please, Nanao-san, please. Thank you very much. About COVID-19 and youngsters or young people's vaccination. And after nearing a peak or reaching a peak, and once we have a containment, then the vaccination rate for the young people might become a challenge. And without any symptoms, the likelihood of the aggravation is low, said to be low for young people. How do you see the vaccination situation with young people? Because some young people are struggling to decide on this. about the young people getting vaccinated. Already, the first shot and the second shot, when we look back what happened, even with young people, 80% or more people got vaccinated. About this vaccination, even among young people, the understanding is deepening. And about the third shot, for themselves and for family members, there has to be a protection. Not only that, the total and the overall society's peace of mind has to be protected and safety as well. So there has to be cooperation from those people. And starting with the booster shot program, a vaccine is safe and effective enough. And on this point, we have to provide detail-oriented explanation so that for younger people, we can solicit understanding and cooperation so that we can advance the vaccination. This is what we'd like to strive for.
This is Ito from Radio Japan. Mr. Prime Minister, today, your office day, you served as the Prime Minister as 127 days. And in this period, there are diplomatic matters, problems, and COVID-19 infections. You made a lot of political decisions. This is a very basic question. You are Prime Minister of Japan. What is the criteria for you to make a judgment on different topics? Please let me know. A criteria for judgment. This is your question in one word. What is best for the people in Japan? That is a yardstick for me to make a decision. Since I became Prime Minister, and then I have dealt with various challenges and issues, in particular our response to COVID-19, then international situations. There were quite active movements, actions, and new challenges came up one after another. That is what I saw. The situations are different. I have to make a decision or judgment. If that is the case, even though I make a decision, but situations always change, then for the people in Japan, what would be the better way? As long as I have a decision, then I will never hesitate and to proceed with our measures. Such a flexible way of making a decision counts quite a lot in my idea. It is based on such judgment that I made decisions of various kinds. Judgment or decision made by myself as a Prime Minister, those decision judgments are the matters of great importance. I have made very difficult decisions, but I have determined that the final decision has to be made by myself.
Kashima-san, please. Fuji TV, Kashima. About the oil price hike and the price hike in recent period, there have been some anxieties over national life. And as the administration verifying what happened and looking at the situation outside and inside of the country, you would like to review the future measures. What is the current measures that you're considering, including oil prices, price hikes, giving a victor on the national economy and the people's livelihoods? So these are very grave challenges. About oil price or crude oil price hike. So alleviation measures have been prepared, and in municipalities, various kinds of support is also financially supported by the central government for each industry. Various rescue package should be made available. So in a multi-layered manner, we have prepared different kinds of packages. However, as you know, including all prices, different kinds of goods prices are hovering at a high level, and there are also uncertainties about the future. So therefore, regarding these various measures, these measures have been prepared. However, the effects of those measures need to be validated, and under Chief Cabinet Secretary, once again, verification will be done, and what will be necessary is going to be discussed towards the future. That's where we are. About the uncertainties, and we have a sense of issues for these, and while maintaining such a posture, what we should add and how we should modify the current measures will be continuously debated. We'd like to see what's happening on the ground to come up with specific measures.
秋山さん。
This is Akiyama from Nikkei. Can I ask a question about the priority measures you have mentioned? Some of them are lifted, some of them will be extended. The study on the effect of the border measures, would you please talk about that? Some regions provide liquor, others don't. There is a difference from area to area. Then what's your evaluation on the effect of the priority measures? To date, then we try to prevent the infection expansion, try to maintain the social and economic activities. I thought about how best we can strike a good balance between two factors, and we came up with countermeasures for Omicron variant. There are different opinions from experts about the variant. Then, without having the wide restrictions on the social economic activities, there are some risky activities such as talking loud without wearing masks. There's indication that putting a restriction on the number of people in those areas, the meals and the meetings in a large number, the meals with liquor, those activities may add up to infection risks. That is what experts say. And we try to avoid those activities as much as possible. We have authorized stores. We ask them to shorten their business hours. Then we have very specific countermeasures against COVID-19. That is what we have done, including the priority measures and the various initiatives. I think that is a basic idea on those different measures taken by the government, I believe. Right now, the pace of infection expansion is coming under control, I said. Not all of those benefits and those effects come from the priority measures, I say. But since the application of priority measures, the cluster infection at restaurants have been reduced. I believe those priority measures have worked to an extent on the provision of the alcoholic drinks. Then whether we put a suspension on that, infection situations are different from region to region. It's quite difficult for us to give one specific answer to your question. But governors, they are the frontline people dealing with the situations. I believe that those governors make appropriate decisions based on infection conditions on different regions, I believe.
Ishigaki-san, please. 時事通信 Ishigaki. About border measures, Prime Minister has repeatedly talked about the suspension in principle for new foreign entrants, and on this front, through this relaxation, that basic principle hasn't changed. Is it going to be banned in principle or allowed in principle? Well, So which one is a principle and which one is an exemption? That's what you're asking, I think. And this time, excluding the people for sightseeing or tourism purposes, the new foreign entrants will be allowed. That's what I have said. And like I have said before, about the total number of new entrants, still have some restrictions, and about the quarantine period. Designated countries and non-designated countries, and there are also people who got vaccinated for the third administration, or there are people who haven't. And depending on the situations and the number of days and the quarantine locations and rules have been worked out, and within such overall rules, the foreign entrants, whether they are or except for tourism purpose, we will let them in.
This is JapanGov from Chugoku Shimbun. Can I ask you a question about the U.S. forces facilities, the one in Iwakuni? Around the end of the year, the infection of COVID-19 expanded in the facility of U.S. forces in Iwakuni. Over this matter, there is an issue about the state of forces agreement and PCR test. There was a clause, but there is a voice trying to have a review on the SOFA so far. Then please let me know how the government is going to deal with the matter of state of forces agreement. The genome analysis and then on the U.S. and the soldiers was carried out. I wonder if you get the result available on the SOFA. Then my view about the agreement. Status of forces agreement between Japan and the United States itself is broad, and the range of regulations and laws. We have different challenged issues coming up. Then realistic measures have been taken to date. In the past, there was an environmental problem associated with the agreement. Then at first, within the agreement, there was no clause on the environment in the agreement. We put a supplementary regulation, then we dealt with the environmental issues. And when there's incident of the non-civilian workers of the U.S. forces, I was a foreign minister, then I dealt with a problem or issue of civilian workers of U.S. forces in Japan. Depending on the different types of issues and problems and how quick we can take measures, and I had discussion based on that. Right now, we are in the fight against infectious disease. The life of people in the region, the people's health is at risk, and we have to take measures very quickly. We had a consultation. Then we had a talk with the United States. We asked the U.S. to act accordingly. In the United States, with the result of talks between Japan and the United States, the people coming and then from Japan, the pre-departure, then after arrival, then on the fifth day of their arrival, there will be 3 tests to be done, and the self-isolation was imposed. And for 3 weeks. That is what we have done with the United States. It is as a result of those activities on January the 14th that number in the U.S. forces, the number of people tested positive was 715 to 81 on February the 16th. On genome analysis was included in your question. When the result was made available, we don't have a specific forecast. I'm not familiar with specific forecast on that. the analysis itself is, of course, one important point. But above all, we have to bring down the number of patients. And we have to fulfill the medical treatment structure in that region. And that will be quite important to protect the health of the people in the region. That is the first step that we have to work on, I believe.
Yamamoto-san, on the second row. TV Asahi? Sorry. Yes. TV Asahi? About the decision of the government policies. So next month, the 6th is going to be the expiry date after the extension. And you said that now is a critical moment, and it's a pace is observed right now. So do you think next month you can lift the measures across the board regarding the current status? The expansion pace has been coming down. However, as far as we hear from the opinions of experts, the severely ill persons will be on the rise in a time lag. There is such a likelihood or risk. So therefore, the situation is still imminent, according to what they have said. So therefore, it's not the time to let our guards down. So therefore, we have to capture the situation. And about whether or not we can lift the measures across the board on 6th of March. And this time, the extension was decided for some areas or the prefectures. In those prefectures, we have to see what's going on. And this time, in 5 prefectures where there was a lifting for the measures, first of all, there was a request from the local municipalities, prefectures, and the number of new infections has to also dwindle. And the bed occupancy has to be below 50%. And severely ill patients' bed occupancy, once again, has to be below 50%. And people recuperating at home, that number has to also decline. And with these views, we had a thorough conversation with local municipalities, and that way we have decided on lifting of the priority measures as far as I was reported. So the situation differs from region to region, so therefore we will not stick to just a single yardstick. However, with these considered going forward, about the prefectures where extension was decided, we have to see what's going on the ground, and we need to also have a thorough talk with the people in local municipalities. And once we think we can lift the measures, then without waiting until the 6th of March, we might be able to lift the measures. That's one of the options, generally speaking. However, of course, we have to see the situation, right, to make a decision. However, generally speaking, I think this should be the course of actions.
There will be 2 questions to go. Then Mr. Furukawa, please. This is Furukawa from Nihon Shimbun. Can I ask a question about border measures? In the business community and the regions, industries are suffering from shortage workers, then some of them said that the economic the disadvantage was greater than the benefit. And what's your take on this? Some people asking for the lifting of the upper limit. Then what is the criteria? Then what is the forecast on the lifting of restrictions? Infection is expanding. We have to strike a good balance between socio-economic activities and prevention of infection. When I think about the balance, there is one important point, and that is infection situations and various conditions will be considered in a comprehensive manner. On border measures, I mentioned that some time ago. infection in Japan and abroad, and difference between the two, and then how the border measures have been taken by various countries, and the progress on the booster administration of COVID-19 vaccines, and the quarantine structure. I think I have to make a judgment by taking account of those different factors. On this particular judgment, as I said, within the balance, I made one judgment. Then I mentioned that the various factors were put into comprehensive consideration. Then I announced a new scheme taken by the government. What is going to happen down the road? I know that opinions are divided on what we should do going forward. Infection, we have to prevent the infection expansion. We have to maintain socio-economic activities. A balance has to be made. Then I think about different factors, and how far we can go is always on my mind. This particular measure announced, this is the first step. And there will be less restriction. There will be relaxation step by step. So this is the first step. I'd like to keep a close watch on what is going to happen.
This is going to be the last question. Yamamoto of Bunker Broadcasting. About the booster shot program, I have a question. The elderly who wants to get vaccinated, about the completion for the administration for those people, I think this is one of your important missions, but still the third shot, cross-vaccination and side effects, there have been some anxieties are heard from the elderly on these fronts. So in order to accelerate the program as much as possible, including how to alleviate their concerns, what kind of measures do you think need to be added? And about the third shot, when are you going to get the administration for the third shot? What will be your timeline as far as you know? First, let me touch upon what you have said last. For myself, the second shot was given at the end of August. So therefore, at the end of February, 6 months will have passed. So later on, in early March, I would like to get the administration. And my plan is I will get vaccinated with Moderna shot. And among the elderly, there have been some anxieties shared about the side effects, and the various opinions are there. And there has been a slow progress, and there is such a speculation. And for that point, yes, I'm fully aware of such opinions. So therefore, safety and efficacy of the administration has to be thoroughly explained. So through SNS and through different media outlets, about the efficacy and safety, there has been a robust explanation. So rather than types of vaccination, the speed has to come first for those people. So not only for yourself, but and for your family members, the entire society will be protected with that posture. So we are asking their understanding for the administration. So from now on, we'd like to use different channels for communication, and once they get a ticket, I'd like to encourage them to get vaccinated swiftly. So we would like to continue on our efforts for their understanding. Thank you very much. So now we'd like to end the press conference of today. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Can we get your answers in writing? Please send such questions to the person in charge. Thank you.
どうもありがとうございました。